Hi friend, I just wanted to take a minute to invite you to our Lash Biz Babes Experience 2026. This is a one-day all online event happening on May 2nd, and our theme for the year is going all in. We are shaking things up and doing it differently than anyone ever has before. This is going to be an all online event as usual, but it's going to be 100% a curated journey throughout your day as we guide you through the mindset, strategy, and passion needed to go all in on your business to make it your best year in business yet. All lash artists, estheticians, and beauty professionals are invited to join us. There will be guided sessions, interactive workshops, a panel discussion, and big giveaways happening throughout that whole day. And tickets are on sale now for only $199. Payment plans are available. Let's go all in on our businesses for 2026 together. All the details and the link for tickets are down in the show notes below. I would love to have you join us online in May. Welcome to this week's episode of Lash Biz Babes, the podcast for solo beauty business owners who want to build a full clientele and create a business and life that they truly love. My name is Erica. I'm your host. I'm a lash artist turned beauty business coach and lash educator. And this week, I'm going to be sharing some questions that you should be asking and some things that you should be watching out for or looking out for when you are looking for a space to rent for your beauty business. Whether you are new to it or looking for a new space, no matter what services you offer, this is going to be applicable to you. I see this question asked in groups all the time, and I actually get DMs with this question probably at least once every few months or so, if not even a little more often than that. So I thought it would be a really good thing to bring onto the show because I compiled this huge list of questions and things to look out for because I have worked in several different capacities in the industry as like a receptionist at a haircutting salon. I've lashed from home. I've worked as like a W-2 employee, booth rent, a salon suites type of setup. Like I feel like I've done a little bit of several different things, and I've also toured several different salons because we've moved a few different times, and so I've walked through a lot of different spaces and seen a lot of different things, and I wanted to share some of those with you so that you can be prepared and be thorough in your search for a space, because I feel like this is something that actually is very important, and it's not just about like finding the cheapest space that you can. Like obviously budget is going to be a part of your decision. However, you do want to make sure it's a good fit for your business long term, because there are issues that you can run into with your space that can affect your business positively or negatively. And unfortunately, I have learned that the hard way. So I want to talk about it. Obviously, renting a space is a big deal. It's a big jump to make. It can be a big investment for your business, honestly. And for a lot of us, like myself, when I first rented a space, I honestly was scared shitless for the monthly payment of that and the monthly commitment of that. And I know I cannot be the only one that has felt that way at one point or another. So I wanted to talk about it to maybe help you feel a bit more prepared as you go into your search, and so that you can be thorough and cover your butt and protect yourself and really look out for the best interest of yourself and your business long term. So before we jump into this week's episode, I just have to give a shout out to this week's sponsor, Prolong Lash. I honestly love everything Prolong. I think they have the best cleanser on the market, and my clients absolutely loved when I would wash their lashes with it before the appointment. So shout out to them. Thank you for being this week's sponsor. And if you're listening to this when the episode first comes out and you're going to be at LashCon next weekend, I cannot believe it's next weekend. If you're gonna be at LashCon, make sure to come find me and say hi. I'm gonna be there. I'm so excited. I know there's a lot of you who are gonna be there, and I cannot wait. So make sure to come find me so we can say hi and get a picture together. And let's go ahead and jump into it. So just keep in mind that this list is non-exhaustive. This is in no way, shape, or form the only questions you should be asking, but this is going to be a solid list of questions to ask, things to look out for, and you can obviously add and take out as you want to and as you decide to, but make sure that you are asking questions and that you understand what you're getting into. Okay, I just want this to be something that gets you thinking about other aspects of renting a space that maybe you didn't think about before, you haven't thought about before, just to help you be prepared going into looking for a space. The first thing we're going to talk about is just some questions to ask because you really want to understand exactly what you are getting yourself into, especially if you're going to be signing a longer term lease. You want to know what's happening. You want to know what the terms are. So, just first thing to start out with is what's the structure of it? Because obviously there's a few different ways that these rentals or spaces can be structured. Is it booth rent? Is it a salon suite type of setup? Are you well, we'll just start with that. I'm like getting ahead of myself. So booth rent, typically, now this can be different depending on the space. People do it in different ways. However, booth rent typically is you can be renting like a station or a room or an area of the salon of the building for your business. And I feel like booth rent, typically you're kind of under the umbrella of the salon as a whole, whereas they have like a shared booking system. They have like similar pricing for everyone. And so it can, like I said, depending on the business, it can be a little bit different. But typically, like one of the salons I looked at, you would have been like I would have been like a provider on their list, and it would have been booth rent, and technically I would have been my own business, but like you're still under that umbrella where it's like that shared booking system. It's like if they call into the salon, they can book with you, that type of thing. You're not like completely on your own like you would be in a salon suite type setup. So a salon suite type setup is there's not really like an overarching like salon or management, or like there's typically no receptionist out front. There's no, like they can't just call the salon and like be like, oh, do you offer lash extension services, and have someone book them with you. That's typically not going to be the thing. Salon suites are more so like they just have different rooms in the same building that you can rent out the space, and you're completely on your own for everything. Your booking system, the way you book clients, like your marketing, everything. So just that's a little bit of the difference. Now, like I said, that can be different depending on the business and on the space, but generally speaking, that's a little bit of the difference there. So you want to know exactly what type of setup it is. You also want to know, is this a W-2 or an employee position? So if they are going to call you their employee, you need to be W-2. Just gonna put that out there. Commission. So are you W-2? Is it like a paid hourly type of position? Are you commission? Are they going to pay you percentage of each service you perform? Are they going to pay you a percentage of each retail product that you sell? Or are you 1099 independent contractor, where they basically are contracting your business and you are responsible for paying your own taxes at the end of the year? So I'm not an expert on this, so you should probably find, I think, what's the one I listened to? I know Lashpreneur podcast, Tara, I don't remember her last name. Tara, the Lashpreneur, I listened to a podcast where she talked about this more in depth. So I would go listen to that if you want to know more about the difference between W-2 and 1099 and all of the intricacies there, or you can talk to an accountant about it. But there is a difference between being a W-2 employee and being a 1099 independent contractor, and you need to know which one you are, if either of them. If you are like your own business completely, you're not going to have a W-2 or a 1099. You file your taxes differently. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a tax professional. I'm not an attorney. I'm just sharing a little bit of what I've learned. And if you were like booth renting or like salon suite type of setup, you would actually be paying the person you're renting from, giving them a 1099 at the end of the year if you paid them more than $600 for the year. So talk to your accountant about that if you have any questions on it. But you do need to know, okay, what's the setup? What's the structure that I'm going into right now, or potentially going into, right? So, if it's a rental space, what all is included in the rent price? And is it a shared space? Is it a private room? Is there anyone else in the room? What days are you going to be in there? Is it full time? Is it part time? If it's part time, what days can you be there? What hours can you be there? Like, what's the availability for that? If it's full time, again, is there any hour restrictions or time restrictions on when you can be there and when you can't be there? If it's commission, how and when is the commission paid? How much commission do you earn on retail products sold? Typically, this is like a percentage of it. And even if you're W-2, sometimes there are places that offer certain types of commission on top of your hourly pay. So that can be something that you ask about as well. For example, I've worked at a place where it was like you had your hourly pay and then you would get like the most ridiculously small amount of commission on top of that. That's another story. But you'd get like 10% of retail sales, and then you'd have to split it with the front desk girl. So you'd really only get 5% of retail sales, or you would get like $1 extra for every client who requested you. So that's something to ask about. What's the pay structure like if it's a W-2 or like a commission position? If you're looking at a commercial space that's not already a salon or like salon suites type of setup, and you're going to use it for your business, you need to ask about like tenant improvements. Is that something that you are able to do? Will the landlord help with any costs of any TIs that you want to do, any tenant improvements that you want to do? So that's basically where, like, if it's like set up for, I don't know, like an office space, for example, and you need to go in and rip out the carpet and put in new flooring, you want to put in like a front desk up front, or whatever you want to change about the space to make it work for the type of business you're going to be running, that's considered a tenant improvement. And that would typically be something that you're going to have to pay for, but sometimes they'll give you like allowances for, say, like replacing the flooring or painting. Sometimes they will work with you on that. So you would want to ask about that. Is there any help with the costs of those? And another thing you want to look at too is if the building is zoned correctly for the kind of business that you have. I'm not an expert on this one either. You're going to hear me say that a few times. But this is something that you want to look into because you want to make sure that the building is zoned in the city for the type of business that you have. So there's like residential zoning, commercial zoning. I want to say there's probably like industrial zoning for like industrial type of businesses. And there's, I believe, even different types of commercial zoning as well. It really depends on your city and your area. So you want to look into that and just make sure that the building is zoned correctly for the type of business that you are running. And then another thing to ask about is there any type of non-compete contract? Now, there's different laws regarding non-compete contracts in different places and depending on where you live, but you want to be aware if that is something that they're going to have you sign. The legality of it just depends on your area and what, they're wanting you to sign. But if they have any kind of like contracts or paperwork for you to sign at all, which we're going to talk about leases towards the end as well, you want to know up front so that you're not like, oh yeah, I'm going to rent this space. And then they're like, bam, non-compete contract that may or may not be legal. You have to sign this. And then you're last minute like trying to read it through and figure out if that's something that you want to sign. So you want to know up front, is there any type of non-compete contract in place? And then we kind of talked about this one a little bit, but when do you have access to the building and how will you have access to the building? So no matter if it's booth rent, or like a salon suite type setup, this is most applicable to those two specific setups. You want to know, is there any kind of restrictions on the hours that you can be there? I had a couple of different places that I've looked at before actually, who told me I could only be there from like 8 to 5, for example, and that like I was not allowed to have a key to the building, couldn't have a key to my room. Actually, I think I had a key to my room at that place. I'll take that back. But like there was one particular place that was like you can only be here on Saturdays from 8 to 5. You can't have a key to the space But it was like booth rent, and just sometimes they have weird rules like that, and you want to know that up front. I personally prefer a place where I have 24-hour access. I have my own key or code to get into the building and can come and go as I please, but that just depends on you and what you're looking for. It's going to be different for everybody, but you do need to know, when do I have access to the building and how will you have access to the building, whether that's your own key, your own code. I worked at one place, or rented from a place that had put like an app in place so you could get in and out with it, like an app downloaded on your phone. You got to know how you're going to be getting in and out. Is there a shared booking system? This is more so for booth rent type of setups, where you're really kind of under the umbrella of that salon. So if there's a shared booking system, is there any type of product provided? Do they provide product for you? This is more applicable for commission-based places, if they're providing product for you or not. And if they are providing product, ask about what brands. Do you have any input on brands? That kind of thing, to make sure that that's going to align and work for you and your business. Is there any type of shared retail area? And if so, do you earn any kind of commission off of any retail that you sell from the shared area? I know some places will have like boutiques attached to it, like have, I don't know, like clothing and things attached in there, or they'll have like skincare products or different things that your clients can buy out in the lobby. So how much commission do you make off of that if you sell any of those products to your clients? Another thing to ask is, do you get to set your own pricing? As I worked at a place, it was again that booth rent place that was so weird, that wouldn't let me have my own key. I could only be there certain hours of the day on the, like, so I was paying for like Saturdays, right? To like rent there on Saturdays every month. And like I could only be there for certain hours on Saturdays. And like I said, I didn't have like a key to the building or anything. And I also had to follow her pricing guidelines. And like she set the pricing for all of the services so that it would be the same across the board for any of the other girls who were there, which I was the only esthetician, so that didn't make any sense for me, but I digress. But, do you get to set your own pricing? Question to ask. And then, are there any restrictions on services or products that you're able to offer? This can sometimes play into like the zoning, or sometimes owners, like if they, like landlords, whatever, if there's already other similar services in the building, sometimes they might not want you to offer it, certain things, or just want to make sure that there's no restrictions on what you can and can't offer. And sometimes things are different depending on like the health department and things, like if it's gonna have the hardwood floor that you need for your services, or if you need a sink in the room. Obviously those types of things are going to play into different restrictions on if you're going to be able to use that space or not. And if it doesn't have those things in place and those are the services that you offer, is that something that you can add or put in? Would they let you change out the flooring in the room? That's something to talk to them about as well. But make sure you know like what your requirements are for your city, for your state, for your health department, or your license regulating agency, so that you are following regulations and codes and things. Because I know like in Utah, when we offered services for like microblading, you had to have hardwood floors. For like hair services, obviously you had to have a sink. Like there was different requirements depending on the services that you were offering, so you want to make sure that the space has what you need as well. And just ask them if they have any restrictions on any products or services that you can offer. Then another thing, is, are you responsible for any tasks in the building outside of taking care of your space or your room? So what I ran into with this was, okay, who's responsible for cleaning the shared spaces? Who's responsible for cleaning the bathrooms? Is that something that the landlord provides? Is that something that each girl takes a turn with, each provider takes a turn with? Is that something where you all pitch in to hire a cleaning lady every month to do it for you? What's the deal with that? Because that's important to know. Are you supposed to be maintaining anything else outside of your space, your rented area, or your room, whatever it is? And then, is there any marketing provided for you? Are they doing any type of marketing for the salon? Are there any shared Instagram pages, social media pages for the salon or the space? And if so, how does it work to get your work posted or shared there as well? I've talked to a couple different people before who have ran into this issue where they're in like a space that has other service providers and there's like a main page for the salon, but like the owner wouldn't post their work, or like it was like weird to try and get their work posted on the main one. So that's something that you can ask about up front, like how can I get my work posted on there too if I decide to rent here? Like what's that process look like? Okay, all you savvy lash artists and salon owners, are you ready to take your business to the next level? Look no further than Prolong Lash. I have personally used Prolong Cleanser over the last few years of lashing, and I put it in all of my students' kits as well because it is a product that I full-heartedly believe in. Prolong Lash Cleanser is the exclusive formula for achieving healthier lashes and ensuring your customers keep coming back for more, unlocking the secret to happier, loyal clients. But here's the best part. Prolong Lash Cleanser isn't just a game changer for your clients, it's the profit rocket your business needs. And who doesn't want to supercharge their salon profit? This business booster is as straightforward as it gets. Satisfied clients keep coming back. Plus, thanks to Prolonged Lash Concentrate, you can craft your own signature lash shampoo, raking in an impressive 65% profit margin on cleanser sales. Join the thousands of lash artists across 85 countries worldwide already boosting their retail profits with Prolonged Lash. It's time to give your clients the gift of flawless lashes, all while growing your business. Head over to www.prolonglash.com and start shopping today. Prolong Lash, where lash aftercare meets business excellence. And the link to shop all things Prolong is in the show notes below. And then you can also ask, these are kind of like, I feel like I'm kind of jumping around here, but I just like brain dumped a whole list of everything I thought of. So we're just gonna roll with the list. But what type of security is on the premises, if any? Is there any type of like automatic door lock on the front door, or on like the individual doors? Is there any security cameras? Because you do want to take into account like um, theft. Obviously, that's not a fun situation, but it does happen, whether that's clients stealing, other service providers stealing, people breaking in. When I worked in Utah, there was someone who had, it was so sad. I think it was right around Christmas time too. Someone broke into their salon and stole thousands of dollars worth of products and equipment and things that were in the salon. And they had security cameras on the premises that were able to capture the person's vehicle, and they did eventually find the person. And I don't know what the outcome of that was, like if they ended up in jail or what, but they were charged with that, and they did eventually find who it was because they did have security cameras on the premises. So that is something to ask about, especially if you have a lot of, like retail products that you've invested into, equipment that you've invested into. That's something to think about. And I don't think that that's the fun things to think about or prepare for, but I would rather you be prepared for that than, feeling sorry in the end. And hopefully that's not a situation that you run into, but it does happen, unfortunately. So we want to be prepared ahead of time and know, is there any kind of security on the premises already? If not, are you able to add like a camera into your room if you wanted to? Is there any type of rules about that? Can you add, like, I know a girl that rented in the same building as me, she had like a keypad that she added on her door that was different than everyone else's. So can you update that if you would like to? Are they going to let you do that? And then another thing to think about, and this goes back into like the licensing, the legality side of things, you need to have your own business license from the city, because typically if you are booth renting or doing like a salon suite type setup where you're just renting the room from them and you're running your own business completely out of the room, you typically do need your own business license from the city because you are legally your own entity, your own business, right? And even if you are like booth renting from a salon and you're kind of like under their umbrella, like you're still technically your own business. So you would still need your own business license from the city typically. At least that's how it worked where I was from. Make sure to look into the legalities to know, do I need a business license from the city, yes or no? And then going along with that, do you need to hold any specific type of insurance policy, like renter's insurance or liability insurance, to be renting in the building? Sometimes with the lease, or the landlord, they will require you to hold a certain amount of insurance to be renting there. And that can play into like if someone gets hurt on the premises, like either yourself or the landlord has insurance for that. So that's something you want to ask about too, is the insurance of it, because I've ran into this as well where a client, so basically what had happened, and I don't know how this happened, but the front door had like a metal piece at the bottom, like the metal framing on it, that got bent somehow and it was like sticking out. And the landlord was made aware of it and did not fix it right away. And my client was walking in and stubbed her toe on it and sliced the end of her toe open. She was like dripping blood onto my tile floor in my lash room. So there's different instances. If someone trips and falls and breaks their arm, who is carrying the insurance to cover that? If there's like ice out front and someone slips on the ice, whose insurance is taking care of that? Like, you want to make sure you're covering your butt. And just random, if there is ice outside, who is responsible for making sure that that is like salted, but you put like salt down, or you shovel the snow or whatever, like who's doing that? I feel like I'm kind of getting like nitty gritty on this, but these are things that you do want to think of, because these are situations that do happen. Like, I would have never thought I'd have a client who would get hurt coming in for their appointment, but she like literally was bleeding in my room, like on dripping, it was like dripping onto the floor. So these are things that you do have to think about. Even if you don't think you're going to run into them, you still could potentially run into them. So ask if you need to have renter's insurance, if you need to have any type of liability insurance, and if so, is there any kind of like requirements for the minimum amount of insurance that you have to have, like a minimum amount of coverage? Make sure you're clear on that if so. And then going into when and how do you pay rent? If it's, you're paying them booth rent, you're paying for your salon suite space, when is it due? What happens if it's not on time? Like, is there any kind of grace period? And how do I pay it? Can you take Venmo? Can I pay you cash? I had one landlord who wanted us to pay him with the Zelle. Like, there's obviously different ways that you can be paying them, but you need to make sure you know how and when, because some of them are kind of picky on that. One of the spaces I was in, actually the last space I was in, went through like 3 different landlords in a year because they kept selling the building. It was kind of frustrating because every landlord had a different management style, which isn't a bad thing. Like, everyone does things their own way, but like we kept having to change what we were doing and sign new leases and stuff. So you really do want to make sure you understand how the landlord works, and like, how do I need to pay you? And make sure that you have all your ducks in a row with that. And then going into lease terms. So is it a set time frame for the lease? Is it like, do you need to sign a 6-month lease or a 12-month lease? Is it month to month? If you're renting a commercial space completely and like doing tenant improvements or anything like that, typically they like longer leases, like 2 to 5 years, 1 to 5 years. So make sure you understand like what the minimum lease length is for that kind of thing. And if you plan on doing that, or even if you plan on just like renting a room in a shared space, like, are you allowed to sublease at all, where you like share the room, someone else pays you rent to be in the room with you? Or like if you're renting out a whole commercial space and you want to have rooms that you rent out to other people to help pay for the rent, like, can you sublease and have leases with other people? What are the rules on that? Because I've also ran into things where some people are like, oh yeah, you can't sublease, you can't share your room, you can't have an employee in there, you can't. There's just all kinds of people, there's all kinds of different rules. And that's why I'm giving you these questions to ask, because you want to be nitty gritty, you want to be thorough, and you want to know what you're getting yourself into. So can you sublease? Yes or no? If that's something that you are interested in doing, make sure you can do that up front. If the lease is month to month, how much notice would you need to give to cancel? If it's like 30-day notice, 60-day notice, whatever. And then if it's like a 6-month lease or a 12-month lease, do you have the option to renew at the end of your lease? And if so, what is that process like? Like, do you need to sit down and have a meeting with them? Do you need to re-sign a new lease? Like what? And you should be re-signing a new lease if your old one is expired. But you want to know what that process is like. I've had a couple students who have run into issues where their lease was expiring and they weren't hearing from the landlord. They didn't know how to get a new one signed. They didn't know if they were going to be able to renew. So that can be something to ask up front as well. And another really important thing when you're renting in a space is having good communication with the landlord or, the person who you're renting from if you're technically like subleasing. So initially I subleased from a girl, so she rented out the whole like building space and then subleased out rooms, so I was technically on a sublease and not directly with the actual landlord. And then when the building sold, we rented directly from the landlord himself, not subleasing. So that can be something to ask too, like, is this a sublease or like an actual like direct lease from, like, do you own the building or not, right? But having good communication, so you want to know like how they prefer you to contact them if there's any questions or issues with the space. And this can be more so something that you can ask like when you're signing a lease too, but just like, do they want you to call them? Do they want you to text them? Do they want you to email them? What's their preferred method of contact? And I would definitely say, as someone who has ran into issues with landlords in the past, like, try to communicate with them via text or email, like a written communication, so that everything is in writing just in case. I mean, I never went to court with anything. That would be something more so you'd want it in writing in case you needed to go to court, whether you were suing them or they were suing you, whatever. But you would want everything in writing just so that you like have proof and to back yourself up too. Like my particular thing that I ran into issues with was the air conditioning was broken and he refused to fix it, and there was just problems with that. And so communicating via text or email was the best, that I could be like, actually, here's what you said, like show proof of that. And I think you get my point. So how do you prefer I contact you if I run into any issues or questions with the space? That would be the question I would ask. And then who is responsible for handling and paying for anything that needs to be fixed inside or outside of the building? So this comes back to the maintenance of the building. Obviously, you're going to be responsible for like upkeeping your room, but say like the light goes out in your room, the light bulb. Who is responsible for fixing that? Let's say a light bulb goes out in a shared area of the building. Is it the landlord who's going to fix that, or are you going to have to do it? If something outside of the building, I don't know, outside of the building needs to be fixed. I'm like trying to think of an example. Oh, so for example, like that thing on the door that I ran into, like where the door frame got bent and was sticking out and was like a danger to clients. Who's responsible for fixing that? And also ask like what time frame are fixes typically made under? Like, are they going to get to it within a week? Are they going to get to it within a month? Like, things to think about, questions to ask. These are real situations that I have ran into where it's like, okay, the light has been out in the hallway for 3 weeks now. Who's responsible to fix this? Like, who do we need to talk to get this done? And then while we're on the topic of this, like I was saying, I had issues with the landlord over the air conditioning and the temperature and the humidity in the space. Obviously, that made a difference as a lash artist. So, do you have control over the temperature of your room or your space? Yes or no? And are you able to adjust the temperature if needed? Like, can you change it on the thermostat? Because that can cause a lot of issues, obviously. So particularly what I ran into was we were in southern Utah, so very hot, of course, and it would be like 10 a.m. and 80 degrees in our studio. this is when I had another lash artist working with me in my studio, and we had the most comfortable leather recliners. I think they were like not real leather, but you know, leather like recliners, whatever. But it would be so hot in there. Clients would be sweating in the recliner, and then their retention was not going well. Like, we were trying to do what we could still to, like, you know, dropping out a new glue dot more often, and like trying to work fast enough with the glue, and trying to work with the adhesive, but like it was just so hot in the space. It was like, we can't do this. And he was refusing to fix the AC. He's like, it's not broken. I had someone come look at it. It's fine. It's just not blowing out enough into your rooms. I'm like, this was not an issue the previous summer. So obviously something is different this year that needs to be fixed, whether it needs to be cleaned out. I'm like, I don't know how this works, but something needs to happen because we are losing clients over this. No one wants to come get their lashes done and sweat in their chair or have their lashes fall out. No one wants to pay a bunch of money to have their lashes fall out. And I'm like, buddy, I'm losing clients. Like, I'm losing money over this. Like, you have to do something to get this fixed. And he refused. So I ended up having to invest in, it was like a $300 or $400 window AC unit, and had to have my husband come and put it in. And because it went in the window, he then started to blame me for, oh, well, that's where all the warm air is coming from because you have that in there and there's a crack in the windows. I'm like, the only reason I even bought it was because it was hot in there to begin with. And so that was where it was really good to be communicating via text or email so that everything was in writing. And I could like show proof of things and send him picture proof and just have everything documented to back myself up, because that stuff can be stressful. So there's just a little bit of that story. But, you know, do you have control of the temperature of the space? Yes or no? And can you change it if needed? So kind of shifting gears a little bit with questions here, but asking how the working environment is with other businesses in the building. Like, if there's other service providers in the same building, does everyone seem to get along pretty well? Now, obviously, they're going to be trying to sell the space to you, and they're not going to be like, oh yeah, there's all this drama and stuff, but I feel like it's still a good question to ask just to see what the maybe general vibe is between everyone. Some of them might be more honest with you than others, but this is something you do want to look out for. And something to also look out for is what the turnover rate is like. Now, this isn't something that they're probably going to be upfront with you about if they do have a high turnover rate, because they don't want to make it seem like, oh yeah, we have a lot of people who leave, and scare you off from it. So you can also phrase this question as like, oh yeah, so how often like do spaces usually become available here? Because it's going to give you that same answer. Like, if there's spaces coming open really frequently, then that's probably a red flag potentially. Like, because sometimes, especially if it's like newer businesses and they're not getting clients enough, people can kind of come in and out more frequently. But if they are having a high turnover rate, sometimes that can mean that there's been issues, there's drama, there's something going on that's making people leave quickly, and that's a red flag for sure. So asking about the turnover rate, or, you know, how often do these spaces become available? Something to think about. Or if you constantly see listings available for that space or for that job, that's probably at least a beige flag to think about. Like, why is this always available? Like, why is there always a new space available? Why is there always job openings here? Or if they're like super desperate to get somebody in, that could be because they're busy, or that could be because they're short staffed, or they have like empty rooms for other reasons that you might find out for yourself once you get in there that might not be very great. So something to think about, turnover rate. And then also asking, you know, what other kinds of businesses are there in the building? This is something you want to think about for like the fumes from other services, whether that's nails or hair. That can be something that's to take into consideration. Also the sound level, if you're offering more relaxing services, but it's like a really upbeat hair salon. Is that going to interfere with the experience that you're trying to give your clients as they relax? And also, what other kinds of businesses are in the building? I wouldn't say, like, if there's similar services to you or other people who are offering the same services, I don't think that that's a deal breaker personally. I was in a building that had at least, let's see, one, two, three, at least three or four other, I think it was probably four other lash artists, and then next door was another, I don't know, like three or four or five of them. Plus, I think there was one upstairs too. It was like a fourplex thing. So I don't think that's necessarily a deal breaker. There's plenty enough clients to go around for everyone where you can all be booked and have clients. But I would just want to know like what else is being offered too. I don't think it would be a bad thing to be in a space where there are different services going on, not because you're in competition with someone who offers the same services, but it might be better if you are someone who maybe is still building your clientele so that you can cross refer clients to each other easier, because it's going to be really a lot easier to, like, so for example, there was a microblading girl in our building too, so I would send clients to her, like refer clients to her, she would refer clients to me, so that helped us out both in the long run to get clients. And clients liked the convenience of that because they could come to the same place for multiple services too. So something to think about as far as services and building your clientele goes. Another thing is how much parking is available outside. Is there any dedicated parking spaces specifically for this building? And going along with that, I would probably drive past or, go over there at least a couple different times during different times of the day before you sign and just see like what it's like. Is it going to be super busy? Is it going to be hard to get in there? Is it very conveniently located? Is like the parking lot super full? Because when I went to look at one of the spaces, once, like I went at night and the parking lot was pretty much empty. It wasn't very busy at all. But when I would go during the day and go take clients, it would just be packed and it was sometimes hard to find parking. Sometimes you'd have to park at the back of the lot or in a different lot. And that's just something to think about. Or if there's very limited parking, like where are clients going to park? Am I allowed to park here? My lash bestie, she had one place that she rented where they would make the employees or like the people who are renting from the place like park in a completely different business's parking lot because they had very limited spaces on the premises that they only wanted for clients. So that's something that you want to know, like what's the parking going to be like? And then is there a deposit, or how much do I need to pay up front to get into the space? Are you paying like first and last month's rent? Are you paying like a security deposit? Do you get that back at all? Does that go towards your rent costs at any point? Understand what the costs are of getting into the space. And then what amenities are available, if any. Does it have like little water bottles or snacks available for clients in the lobby? Is there a receptionist? Does it have the shared booking system? Does it offer Wi-Fi included? Like those types of amenities. And then also, does the rent price include like utilities, water, or trash, like all of those things? And if not, what is the added cost for that? What's the average cost of those each month? And then, are there any other rules or policies that I need to be aware of? Is there anything else I need to know before making a decision on renting this space? So those are the questions that I thought of for you, all from personal experience or experiences from my friends or students in the industry as well. Again, it's not it's not exhaustive. Those are not all the questions you should ask. Like, think of other things and, be asking as you go. If you're confused on something, you need more clarity on it, ask. There's no such thing as a dumb question on this. You want to make sure you understand what you're getting into. So the next thing is just some things to look out for. I would say write down all of your questions ahead of time so that you don't forget anything that you want to ask. Be observant when you're touring a place and pay attention to the little details as far as like the cleanliness of it, the way it looks, the vibe, the energy, like those types of things. Like, pay attention to all of these little details because it will affect your business in the long run. And these could be something that like raises some red flags, some green flags, some beige flags. Like, pay attention to those little details. And then also, the landlord or the person you're going to be renting from, how do they communicate Do they communicate well with you? Are they organized? Do they have answers for your questions? Do they have policies or systems in place already? Like, do they seem like they have it together? They know what they're talking about? Just because, I mean, it's not necessarily a deal breaker, but any issues that you're having up front with somebody, whether that's communication issues or they're kind of disorganized, they're slow to respond, those are probably going to be issues that you're going to run into or things that you have to deal with from them long term. So I would encourage you to pay attention to that up front in case any of those would potentially be a deal breaker for you. Then again, pay attention, like we touched on this one as well, pay attention to the turnover rate. How many times do you see jobs listed there? How many times do you see spaces open there? Can you talk to anyone else who has rented there before? Can you talk to any of the other businesses in the building and see how they like it? See if they've had any issues with the landlord. See what information you can gather about the area, about the space, and any potential struggles or problems that you might run into. Are there any big windows in the space that could potentially affect your temperature or your humidity? Because where I lived, it was really hot and dry, and so I had two really, which were great for natural light, but I had two really big windows in the bigger room that I rented. The first room I rented was really small and it didn't have any windows. The second room I rented was a lot bigger and it had these two really big natural light windows, which was awesome for the light, but it was not awesome for the fact that it made our room really hot in the summer, and then the AC broke, and then I had a bunch of issues with that. That lost me time, or not time, that lost me money and clients. So be looking at that and see, okay, is this something that's going to affect my space? Is this something that I can, you know, mitigate, control? Am I going to be able to control the environment in there? Is that going to cause a lot of issues for me? Is this going to be an ideal spot for me to be renting out of or offering these services out of? That could also go the other way too, where maybe it's really cold where you're at and you have the big windows that are going to let in a lot of like cold air. You do need to have control of the temperature and humidity, so that's something to look out for when you go to tour the space. Another thing is paying attention to the noise level in the space, paying attention to any kind of fumes. I worked next to a girl who did nails for a while. Love her to death. She did my nails for a while too, but it did cause it to have like nail product fumes in the space, and so that's something to think about too, if that's something you want to be like breathing in or smelling all day too. And then if anyone is upstairs, pay attention to how the sound of that is. That could obviously be different depending on the day or the time of day, but something to think about, because we, like I said, it was like a fourplex of businesses and we were like the bottom left, and upstairs was a salon that was just very active and they would drop stuff all the time and they were always being super loud with their feet and walking around. So that was something I would pay attention for. Is what is the noise going to be like? Because if you want a really relaxing service and environment for your clients, and that's something that's very important to you, then the sound levels of the businesses around you or the people in the room next to you could be a potential deal breaker for you. Or maybe that's something that could just be like, well, I would prefer to rent this other space over this one because this one's a lot louder than I would like it to be. Or maybe you wanted to be in more of an upbeat environment and picking one that matches that. And then the next thing, we kind of touched on this already, but is the building hard to get to? Is it conveniently located? Like I said, make a couple visits just to see how it is during, how hard is it to get in there? How's the traffic? Is this going to be a pain in the butt for your clients? That kind of thing. And then lastly, just the overall vibe and environment of the space. Does it align with the environment and experience that you want to give your clients? So once upon a time, we moved to Wyoming. I don't know if I've ever talked about this in the podcast before. I can't remember, but we moved to Wyoming for my husband was there for like 6 months. I think I lived there for like 3 months of that. But before we changed our minds and decided to move back to Utah, I had toured several different spaces to potentially lash out of out there. And all of them were a lot different than the other. It was just very different vibes, very different environments. One was very like modern, a newer building that was more like luxury type of vibes. It was like, I can't remember if it was a med spa or just like a day spa, but it was just really nice on the inside. They wore scrubs, like it was very clean, very professional, very kind of relaxing type of environment. Versus there was another one where they were like really spunky, outgoing personalities, like they did a lot of like vivid color hair, like hair coloring services. It was like a room in a hair salon. A lot more like louder, upbeat, outgoing, like cursing more. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I'm not judging anyone, but it just was a difference in experience, right? And everyone's going to be different with what they vibe with, what their clients vibe with. There was also another space that was like smaller and older and farther away from me, where it was like the room was smaller, but the environment was like maybe not so like med spa, tranquil, peaceful, relaxing, quiet like, but it was still like a really relaxing environment, comfortable environment, maybe not just as upbeat as the other. So there's like a lot of differences between that. And if it's like a shared space, how's the vibe of the people you're going to be sharing with? Do you trust the people you're going to be sharing with? If you're going to be able to leave any of your products there, like, is there a space for you to lock up your stuff? That's another question I just thought of on the fly. But yeah, just seeing like what the overall vibe of the place is and the environment of the place and what will you align with? What are you going to get along well with? What do you like and what are your clients going to like? What kind of experience do you want to give them? What kind of environment do you want to give them? And finding a space that allows you to do that. Like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with any different type of space or any different type of environments. Everyone's gonna vibe with something different and have different preferences on that. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's just what's gonna be the best fit for you and for your business specifically. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was your lease, because you definitely want to make sure you have a signed lease, because this is not just going to protect the landlord or whoever you're renting from, it's going to protect you and your business as well. So make sure everything that you discuss is in writing and it's signed and dated by both parties so that you are both protected in the event of any issues arising. We've talked about some of these issues. You just never know, okay? Past episode, I told you how it flooded. If there's any kind of fire, if there's any kind of flood, if there's any kind of theft, if there's any kind of issues at all, someone gets hurt, something breaks, like you will probably very likely run into issues like this. And you want to have it in writing. How is that going to be handled? It probably is not going to be like full scope, include every possible little thing that could ever happen. But generally speaking, anything that you guys discuss, any terms that you discuss, like if it's going to be month to month and you need to give 30 days notice to cancel, that needs to be in there. If it includes Wi-Fi, drinks and snacks for your clients, and like a shared booking system that you don't have to pay extra for, make sure that that is in the lease so that, again, it protects both parties and you can get what you were told you would get, right? I would definitely not recommend renting without a lease or a signed agreement. And when you do get your lease, you want to read through the entire thing word by word. You want to understand every little part of it. If you don't understand, you can have a lawyer or an attorney read it through just to make sure that it is legally sound, that everything makes sense, that it's good to go, especially if it's any of it like is legal jargon that maybe you're just not really sure on. And you want to ask any questions that you have about the lease and just make sure again that you understand every part of it. And the landlord, whoever gave you the lease, should be able to explain everything included in it to you. So like if you're like, okay, I'm wondering, can I get a little bit more clarity on this paragraph? And just have them maybe explain it to you in different terms just so that you understand what it's saying. You don't want to sign something and then be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that that was in there. Like, this isn't like an app or, Google or whatever where you're not actually reading the terms of service. You want to read this. This is going to affect your business long term. You want to know what's in it. You want to make sure you understand and that you agree and that everything that you agreed to is in the terms of the lease. So I think that's about all I have for you. I hope that this was helpful and helps you think about things that maybe you didn't think about before, or helps you just to be a little bit more prepared as you go into finding a space to rent, and just maybe hearing a bit more of the behind the scenes of what that is like, because there are issues. It's just like taking clients. At some point or another, you're going to run into issues with them. You're going to run into times where they break your policies and you're going to have to enforce them. It's kind of the same thing with renting a space. You're eventually going to run into some type of issue with the space, and you just want to know ahead of time, and kind of, if you can ask ahead of time any questions, kind of know what you're getting yourself into. How is that going to be handled? What are the rules? What are the restrictions? What are, you know, try and be as thorough as you can on this, because I think it really is important. Moving spaces is kind of a pain in the butt and something that you probably aren't going to want to do very often, because then you have to change all your licensing and like your LLC if you have one. You have to change your city business license address. Like, there's a lot of behind the scenes, and not that that's impossible. Like, obviously changing spaces is something that you can do if and when you decide to, but you do want to just be thorough up front, so that hopefully you can find a space that you love that's going to be your long-term home for your business for at least a while, so that you can really get settled in, have a great place to be running your business that is a great place for your clients, and that you're not like jumping around all the time. So I hope this was really helpful for you. And if you are going to be looking for a space soon, or you're in that process, best of luck. I hope you can find one that is amazing and suits your needs well as a business owner. So I love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you again next week.